So you want to start your own business, right? It seems like people say this is the American dream, and we're going to discuss today if it really is, right? And this article Anthony shared with us was Peter Diamandis had talked about how opening your business is becoming a record and easier to do than ever. One of the things he hits you with right away in this article is that there's 1.56 million new applications between basically 3 months from November to January. The highest 3-month period since tracking began in 2004. So what are your guys' like big picture, and we're going to get into more of the details, but what are your big picture feel for this article? What can people expect, or what were your big takeaways and things you learned from it?
Anthony, you want to go first? I got a couple.
Yeah, go ahead, John. You got this.
The first one, I've said this for years because there's been a lot of studies on this, that the normal entrepreneur, if there is such a thing, the average entrepreneur by mode is not 25 years old. They're 45 years old. They've been working in the industry for 25 years, 20 years. They've got a network of people. They know the industry. They know the problem set. And those are the entrepreneurs that are successful. And they do it as a team of people, typically 2 or 3 people that kind of get together and found companies. And I love that he talks about that entrepreneurship is about venture capital for a group of people, but barbers are entrepreneurs. I think about, people in Europe who've been 6 or 7 or 8 family generations in the family business, whether it's, winemaking or hospitality or running a bed and breakfast, or like those are entrepreneurs too. They're running a small business. And so I think fundamentally, we think about entrepreneurship, we think about venture capital and exit and wealth creation is a pretty typical tech entrepreneurship, but there's a ton of other kinds of entrepreneurship: plumbers, electricians, all the trades, auto body shops. Like I just think this was such a great article from that perspective to kind of give people a broader view of solving problems. I don't agree that everyone that solves problems is an entrepreneur. There's lots of people in big corporations that are not entrepreneurs that also solve problems really well. But I love the concept he had.
So John, to follow up on this a minute, so you mentioned that entrepreneurs are over 45. What he actually points out in this thing is that the group that's growing the fastest are the 55 and over, are people that are growing at unprecedented rates. Why? Tell people a little bit, why is it important, or why 45-year-olds, not what people think 25-year-olds that most entrepreneurs stem up from?
I mean, look, candidly, most 25-year-olds just intuitively or by experience don't understand the problem set of the industry like someone who's been in the industry for 20 or 25 years, and they don't have the networks to people purchasing the product. They don't have the networks for capital. They don't have the professional networks that somebody who's been in the industry for 45 years. Not to say that a 25-year-old can't be successful, but people forget that Bill Gates had a network with his father built in to what he was doing. His dad wrote $1 million check, and that's $1 million a long time ago, and it was worth a lot more than it is today. And he had a network of people built in. I don't know if that's true for Michael Dell or not, but like there are just things that you need to be successful as an entrepreneur. By the way, you can get that by doing 200 interviews with stakeholders. You can get a lot of that network. You can build that information. And one of the things I hear smart advisors tell young entrepreneurs is go do 200 in-depth interviews in the industry if you're going to start at that age. So I'm not against that in any way, shape, or form. I'm just acknowledging that the truth is, like I was in Europe recently. I talked to someone who was 5th or 6th generation in their wine business, and for 20 years they worked in their parents' wine business, and then in the year 20 something, the parents handed it over. This has been apprenticeship for, most of recorded history has had this type of apprenticeship. So I just think what you're seeing has been true for 20,000 years, and now we're just finally naming it correctly, which I love.
Well, I think some of the people you mentioned, right? Gates and Dell and all these, a lot of the tech people started really young. And I think, one, we're seeing the outliers, and you're talking about the people that are the most successful, but the majority are in that older band. But I also think tech is a little bit different. If somebody's doing something really cutting edge tech, a lot of times the kid knows more about it than the older person. So
Mark Benioff at Salesforce started at Oracle for years. He was working with Larry Ellison for a long time. So I think for every story, there's a counter story. I think I just want people to have the real information.
I agree. Anthony, what's your big picture?
Well, I think you're putting a little bit of the cart before the horse. The question was, can anyone become an entrepreneur? And the answer is hell no. No, you can't. Not everyone can, because not everyone has the 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 work ethic to get it done. You know, John mentions interviewing 200 people. I mean, I can't imagine trying to interview 200 people in an industry, but it's probably necessary if it's a highly competitive industry with lots of options and you're trying to find, you know, the edge in that particular market. It's a tremendous amount of work to run your own business, to come up with an idea, to figure out the market, to then reach out and find supportive suppliers, manufacturers, you know, capital, and so forth. Let me you know, go back to the article I sent you guys this morning about the two 8-year-olds in Massachusetts. I read the article, and there's a lot to it, but two 8-year-old kids have generated $100,000 worth of revenue selling what everybody calls stuffies, which are little stuffed animal, ugly animals. And they did this not on their own. Okay, they did it with, they had an idea, and then with the help of their parents and guidance, who kept them on an appropriate path for an 8-year-old, they were able to leverage the Reddit community. They were able to leverage Chat GPT. They created some basically stick figures of a fat blob is what they called, because they were targeting GLP-1 suppliers. They uploaded these stick figures, if you will, to ChatGPT, gave them a complete rendering of what a manufacturer would need in order to produce the product. And then the parents got involved, helped them out, and off they went. So there were guardrails for the 8-year-olds. But the point is, these little guys, two brothers, worked really hard, so did the parents, so did their friends, so did the manufacturer who put up the capital to, you know, to do it. And it's just a tremendous amount of work that went into making this happen. It's a cute little story, two 8-year-olds make $100,000. There was a lot of effort that went into it to make it happen. And if you're not ready for that, you know, get your resume up on LinkedIn and go get a job working inside a company so you can learn, you know, more about how to run a business, because it takes just a tremendous amount of effort to do it.
But by the way, Dad is a general partner at a venture capital fund. I mean, just so we're being clear about like networks available, dollars available, understanding the venture. Like, I just think it's worth stating like that is not all networks are built the same.
No, it was definitely a, you know, a headline grabber, you know, to get you to read the article. But like I said, that's the point. The whole point is it ain't that easy, right? You know, we talked last week or a couple of weeks ago about the two entrepreneurs in California who got a $400 million business going in the GLP-1 business. You know, they hit it right at the right time. They started selling GLP-1s. There's only two of them working, or whatever the case might be. There has to be more to that story. You know,
look, I've got people that I know that know them, and I've talked to them about that. Here's the point, though, that I'm trying to make that I wish that people who are interested in this topic would grab, and that is that the Stuffy story and the GLP-1 story, those are 1 in a billion.
Yep.
Barbershops, plumbers, these people run real businesses and make real money, right? And can build an entire durable business around all of this for generations. Now, some of those businesses are changing. I recognize that AI is going to put some people out of business or fundamentally change the way that small business works. But there are real small businesses that have been operating for generations and generations and generations. And the apprenticeship model is alive and well in many, many industries. And so, you know, you can try to make the fast hit venture capital, like that happens for some people, but a lot of people get burned there too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race, and there's a lot of ways to make money in very old industries. And so I just wish people wouldn't poo-poo that. That's all.
Well, I want to go back to Anthony's story. I love this story, okay? And I love the story of the guys with the 400 million, or I think they're on a 1.8 billion dollar run rate this year, blah blah blah. Like, I wish the media gave us more of this, more abundance, more positive news. And yes, I understand these 8-year-olds. Okay, great. Like you just said, they have venture capital. But what I hear when I hear that, and what I hope people hear, is if these two 8-year-olds can do this, what can I do? Now, to Anthony's point, they better be
Hold
willing to
on,
do the work.
pause.
Let me finish.
The 8-year-olds didn't do it, Randy. Like that's the point I'm trying to make is they
But
had a dad.
you just cut me off in the middle. They got coaching and they did it, okay? The point is, it's a good story. The second thing, if somebody's 25 years old and they really want to do this,
Yep,
then they should go do it. And if those 8-year-olds,
100% agree.
they have that network. But if you're 25, you can go network. You can go meet people. You can go knock on doors. You can write emails. You can write letters. Like, if people want to do this, the opportunity is there. And a lot of this is the tools. And like, a big part of what's happening, it's a lot easier to start a business than it's ever been before. Now, is it easy? I'm not disagreeing with Anthony. No, hell no. Starting a business is hard. We did a whole episode on this. It's hard. But you can do it if you want, and it's never been easier. That's the real.
Yeah, I agree with all that. The knowledge set you can get from AI, the ability to go get the information those 8-year-olds had if you can prompt an AI, is more available today than it's ever been in human history. Fully agree. And learning work ethic at someone's knee, I think, is still the same problem it was 1,000 years ago.
So I just think that Anthony, you got something to say here. You disagree. So let's go.
No, it's not that I disagree. I just have a hard time with the word easier. There are fewer. I don't know, what's a better term than that? It's not, because easier implies easy, And to John's point, entrepreneurship has been around for thousands of years, right? I mean, this is nothing new, but it isn't. There are some barriers that have been taken down. That you are more able to gather information and make decisions about what you want to do and what might work and might not. But none of it's easy. It's grueling to do the work. That dad picking up the phone and calling his venture capital buddies to help with these 8-year-olds. That's not an easy thing to do, because think of that messaging. Hey, you want to put in $100,000 to help my two 8-year-old kids?
Got it. But yeah, but these two kids, they wouldn't have been able to dump it into AI. Like even with those parents,
Yeah.
this didn't happen 10 years ago, right? Like there's tools now that I don't give a shit if you give the parents the credit or the kids the credit. There's tools that have made this easier. And we all think about the things that we do. Like, yes, because we all have 100 years of experience because we're ancient. Some shit's just easier because we've learned and we have skill sets that an 18-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 28-year-old doesn't have. But every one of us knows that there's so many things we can do so much faster, so much more efficiently in today's world with today's tools.
This is actually, this story has inspired me, because I have an idea for a tool, a handheld tool. I'm not going to say what the handheld tool is because you guys will steal it. But it inspired me because I didn't really know how I would present it to somebody. But now that I can see two 8-year-olds uploaded it to ChatGPT, I'm going to do a pencil drawing and see what I come back with. But it is inspiring to know that there remains so much out there. There always has been, right? You could always be an apprentice to an electrician, to a carpenter, to a home builder, whatever the case might be. You can work like I did for 40 years inside of a group of corporations, so you can get experience and mentorship and learn what not to do, not more than what to do. When I finally got off my butt and started my own business, so I just think we're in to your point, Randy, that there's tremendous abundance available out there. It's not everyone's going to just be a lottery ticket. Let me put it to you.
Here's the good news. Here's the good news in all of that. The things that are really hard, like if someone's like, I don't want to be an accountant and I don't have accounting, well, AI can tremendously help you on the accounting and finance side. If you're not good at business planning, it can help you with that. If you're not good at financial analysts like FP&A, it can help. Like there's so many things that, like, one of the things Diamandis asked was, what if you're not the CEO type? If you're not the CEO type, there are ways you can get very low cost solutions today. And then you can go to mentors and say, hey, here's my plan, shoot it apart. And a really smart mentor is going to help sharpen that plan for somebody. So I think to Randy's point, like, it is much, 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 much easier. And I think that the small business is going to go through a renaissance here and with much lower barriers to entry. Randy?
I'll give you a great example of something that's easier. When I first started a business 15 years ago or so, I built my own website. I wasn't trying to put a bunch of money into it. I was shoestringing. I didn't even know if there was a business there. And I was like, let's get some checks before we really go broke doing this thing. I had to learn how to build a website. I had to download software. I could build a better website today, and I guarantee you 5 to 10 minutes using AI than what I did back then, right? I actually went and looked. That old website's still up because it's still working, and I haven't updated it in about 12 years. It's horrific. I mean, not an exaggeration. In 5 minutes today, I can do a better job with AI. Then I realized, what good is a website if nobody can find you? So I had to learn SEO. I became an SEO expert, but it took me months. I would go to the gym and listen to podcasts on SEO, and I spent hours and hours and hours educating myself. And now, could I put this into AI and be as good as I was at SEO then? Maybe not. Could I get 95% of the way there? Yeah, in like under 30 minutes, right? So there are a lot of things that are just much lighter lifts, and there's more opportunity. And so I want to get into some definitions, though, John. This is usually Dr. John's area, where John wants to be very succinct on language. But one of the things in the article, he talks about an entrepreneur, and he's got a very broad umbrella as an entrepreneur. I look at a difference between a freelancer, a small business owner, and an entrepreneur, and I think he's putting all of them under one umbrella. But I think it's, to me, I don't know, when you guys hear small business owner and you hear entrepreneur, I think two different things.
Yeah, here's what I'm going to say. Like, if it's true that the Eskimos have 800 words for snow, and if it's true that context matters when you're using an AI, then we'd better get super clear about what words mean and know more of this. Like, well, this means something to me. Because if it means something to me that's different than the whole rest of the world, I'm going to get garbage in, garbage out all the time. Just like we do with communication between two people talk past each other. So I think the more nuanced we can be in our language, like the English language has had less and less words used every year for the last, I don't know how many years, but I think we need to use more nuanced language that's more specific and more broadly accepted. Because if we don't do that, and we keep going down the path of my truth versus your truth, which is code for my perspective versus your perspective, like, we need to use the words that mean what the words mean so that we can get really clean context and get better, faster answers to move the human race forward. Not because of anything else. That's all I'll say on that.
So for our purposes, I'll just tell you what I think. I think that the guy that goes and becomes a plumber and is just one man, I call him a Chuck with a truck, I consider that a small business owner. And I think that's noble. I'm not making any good, bad, better, best. That's not my point. My point is, I think what a lot of people think of as entrepreneurs is a small business owner, right? Somebody that opens a restaurant and runs a restaurant is a small business owner, and God bless them, because they're a big part of building this country. Entrepreneur is that guy that starts a plumbing business, then hires a second person and a third person, and the next thing you know, they've got 30 trucks running around the neighborhood, or 5 or 10, but they're actively growing and building. I think of that as the entrepreneur, and then the freelancer might be the person that, does whatever. Maybe, historically it's a website designer, or, it could be a bookkeeper or whatever. Somebody that they work for themselves, they've got clients, they market, they're not looking. To me, that's the distinction.
so the whole, that to me, like that's the part where I get sideways, like, because Merriam-Webster says it's one who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise. So when you put that word into an AI, whatever it means to Randy, unless you want to redefine that every time you put it into an AI, it's going to pull something like Merriam-Webster and say one who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise. Now, a freelancer then is a subset, right? A small business owner is a subset of that. This is why we have supersets and subsets of things. And look, at the end of the day, this is all code in an AI. So, and for communication, the same thing. But how many times have I watched people get into arguments about the definitions of something? Because this means something to me, this means something to me, but we can't even have the conversation until people agree with the definition. So I accept that's what it means to you. I hope you accept that Merriam-Webster says something different online. And then when you go to an AI and don't define it, like so that's where I think.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, there's always, this is where you're talking about the 800 types of snow, right? Like, she's basically defining the small business and the entrepreneur as the same thing. I think
You guys-
I think it's a superset of a subset.
You guys are catching yourself coming around the corner. It really doesn't matter, right? An entrepreneur, by definition, is what John just talked about. Randy, it doesn't matter that, you don't want to consider the Chuck in the truck an entrepreneur. He is. She is. They're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if they're banging keys and creating agents and codes, or if they own a cabinet company or, a plumbing company, whatever the case might be. They are an entrepreneur by definition. So, it doesn't matter. So I don't know what this discussion.
Well, the reason the most important thing I want people to take away is you can do any of these. Like, being a freelancer, I think, even though it technically isn't an entrepreneur by either of our definition, I think it still works in this conversation, right? And by the way, I think one of you said earlier, maybe it was Anthony, if somebody really doesn't want to start their own business, the other option, I think maybe he talks about in this article, they can go find somebody that is an entrepreneur or somebody that's a business and go work with them, right? Some people's skill set aren't meant to be the CEO, they're meant to be the COO.
And maybe outside the scope of this conversation, maybe not, is like in the future, it may be that there's more of a career path, like bifurcation, where it's like some people are definitely going to train to go work for big companies. Other people are definitely going to train to go work for small companies, and then at someday be able to take over that company is on the journeyman kind of apprenticeship route. And so, but I think about like the big companies that have 70 or 100,000 people that work for them. It's a different skill set to navigate that than it is to navigate apprenticeship and journeymanship of running a small business. And so I wonder if that's going to be more separate in the future or not. I don't know the answer to that.
How much of this do you think is opportunity driven? In other words, digitizing stuff and AI and all these things that make it easier or drive costs closer to zero. How much of it is that, and how much of it is necessity that people need to start a business because, their career path isn't working?
Well, that was one of the things we touched on earlier, or in our discussions prior to this, was what season of life are you in? And what do what would you do in different seasons of your life? If I assume, and I'm certainly not 25 years old anymore, but I assume people in their 20s, they've got visions of grandeur. They haven't been, likely they haven't been through the gauntlet. So they're thinking, I'm going to create something that's going to change the world and get me the yacht and let me hang out with DiCaprio and so on and so forth, versus the 55-year-old person who's been through hell and back and now is going to, maybe have a more nuanced and practical approach to becoming an entrepreneur, taking advantage of an entrepreneurial opportunity presented to them. It may be a very boring, non-technical business that is leveraged by the new technology that we have available to us and the new resources we have available to us. So I think it depends where someone is in their career path and what they've been through and how they're going to approach what I'm calling entrepreneurship.
Anthony, you wanted to give people practical, like, what businesses could you start, right? And I mean, this is a pretty long list, but if you were advising, right, a kid or, I don't know, I mean, I guess it could be an 80-year-old, right? I mean, that's another thing that was interesting in some of the data in this article is the number of businesses being started by people that are 80 plus is at an all-time high as well. And so what businesses would you recommend people?
You know, the there's kind of a, not a hierarchy, but, you know, you, a business where you're solving a unique problem for a lot of people that have that particular problem. So that this would be, in my mind, someone with tremendous technical skills. They've found, you know, an FP&A model, John. That was a great example, you know, of
What's FP&A?
Finance
financial,
planning.
yeah,
Go ahead.
financial planning and analysis. So give me your books, give me your cash flow statements. I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna tell you how good you are, where you can spend your capital, where you shouldn't spend your capital. And it's gonna be done in 15 minutes because I've built this model, you know, that can do it for you. And then you can take it to your strategist, your partners and so forth and have a discussion of where the holes are in the boat. There, I would tell people to look at boring businesses that aren't exciting, quote unquote, aren't cutting edge. You know, things that aren't going to be AI endangered. You know, building a house. Yeah, we're likely to have robots and so forth on the job, doing some of the dangerous work. You know, automating some of that, whether it's maybe with, you know, your printing options, which seem to be taking hold. But climbing into an attic to fix an air conditioning unit, you're always going to need someone to do that. You know, pest control, things like that. So I would look at boring businesses. And again, it depends on where you are and what capital you have. You know, buying a business, John mentioned apprenticeships and passing things down from the grandfather, the dad to the son. I had to sell my business because none of my kids wanted it. You know, none of my kids wanted the business, and John didn't want to buy it from me to give to his kid because he wasn't ready for it yet. You know, he was too young. So I'd look for those type of opportunities. You know, someone that wants to cash out, and because you're 50 something, you've got a network of friends that maybe can raise a few $1,000,000 and you can go make something happen on your own. So, you know, the answer is it depends. You know, stage of life, how much capital you have, what you're willing to put into it.
Well, and I'm gonna jump in here. It's what are you good at?
Yep.
What do you love doing? What do you want to spend your time, talent, and treasure doing? And what mark do you want to leave on the world? Those are the 4 questions I've talked to you about, both of you, for the last 15 years. And it holds true at any stage of life. Like, figure out those 4 things.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of data that boomers are exactly what Anthony's talking about. There's lots of boomers that have had businesses that have sustained them and their families their whole life, and they can't find somebody to sell it for. I mean, we've had discussions, you know, recently we had a guest talking about what you need to exit, and there's a lot of boring businesses, what Anthony's talking about, that I think that the right young person that comes along, they could either just take them and keep going, or if all of a sudden you got somebody, you take over a business and they're still doing everything on, you know, pencil and paper and sundials and abacuses and you know, and you could modernize or use AI or do a lot of other things to probably improve some of these businesses, right? So I do think there's a lot of opportunity there, taking over existing businesses.
There's no question. And you know, the business I sold, I was tempted to go and buy it back at a not too distant path. Actually, that opportunity is probably still there. And I can think of a ton of digitization that we would employ. I mean, we would take out pretty much the whole back office of that business. The inventory management would change. We'd take a lot of cost out of that business, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
I want to hit on another thing. One of you mentioned this at the beginning, but this is really Peter in the article. One of his main things is really, he kind of defines, again, Merriam-Webster wouldn't be happy, but he defines an entrepreneur is somebody that solves problems. I think, John, you said that, right? And so, is there a problem? And the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity, right? So I think that's really a good way to look at it, is what problems do you see? I mean, I've got a business I'm spinning off of my main business because I had problems in-house. I started using automation to fix these problems. And then when I started talking to other small business owners, they were like, oh, I would like that for my business, or that's cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so it kind of all fell together almost accidentally, but I saw the problems I had. So I do think his idea of his concept of wanting to fix problems is a misunderstood thing about entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like old school, right? It's solving a problem, building a mousetrap, all of those, finding a new tool that, you need to build a crib or whatever. That's great. It's also foreseeing where problems might, people don't really realize it's a problem. I'll give you a simple example, but it's real. The changing landscape of advertising. It's completely it is so different than it was 24 months ago. And I'm trying to envision what it's going to be 24 months from now, whether it's video, where the video gets delivered, how it gets delivered, how it's viewed, on what kind of devices it's viewed. Google changes the rules of search every 20 minutes. What's the impact of the LLMs on search? Is it gonna become a circular thing where it comes back and it's the same old because these LLMs are gonna start charging just like Google does? Where the hell is that going? So if you've got a mindset around that and you've got a good grasp of it today, that would be a business that I would highly recommend people think about. If that's your specialty today, that specialty is changing. You better get ready for it. There may be great opportunity for you to be a person on the leading edge of that, because it's like standing in quicksand, I think.
I love that concept, right? Because marketing has been a thing, and this has been a business. It's just going to look different in the future. Yeah, I mean, the little guy definitely has an opportunity there. Well, another thing Peter talks about in this article is he talks about the two critical decisions that people need to be willing to make if they're going to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, right? So the one is taking 100% responsibility for your financial future and the business, right? Not 80%, not 95%, but 100%. And the other one is, this is kind of what we talk about, solving problems, but except that you have to create value before you get paid, right? So
You better understand empathy for somebody else's problems, because just because you think it's a problem doesn't mean someone's going to pay you for their problem. I mean, that's a huge part. And empathy, I think this will drive more empathy in the world for good entrepreneurs.
So what else? I mean, let's talk about that. Take 100% responsibility. I mean, I don't want to hand wave over that. That's a big deal, right? If you aren't willing to do that, you probably shouldn't start your own business, right? You guys agree with that?
Isn't that your responsibility anyways? Take 100% responsibility for your revenue, whether you're working for a company, a big company, a little company, or for yourself. I mean, I don't find
It
that
should
to
be.
be. Yeah, I don't find that as an earth-shattering statement by him. It seems such a smart guy. He has a way of just feeding you pablum sometimes.
What
I
percent?
think that's true for an entrepreneur. Maybe not true for someone who's not an entrepreneur reading this. Like, I think that's, for people that don't understand entrepreneurship, they're looking for that. I don't know if that's, true.
I don't think the average person, if you hear the conversations going on in public now, agree with you, Anthony. Like the average person thinks that the employee is taking advantage of everybody and CEOs make too much, and maybe they even do, but they do. That's what the market pays them, right? Like there's a lot of people that just think they're owed a job and just go to work to collect a paycheck. And they're not trying to maximize dollars. Like when you were in corporate America, how many people were trying to maximize dollars, and how many people were playing politics and trying to get ahead of the guy in the cubicle next to him?
Well, so to answer your question, almost everyone was trying to get ahead one way or another, and I think we shifted the conversation to from being responsible for the revenue that you bring into your home. It just doesn't. Of course, it's 100% your responsibility. You're making a decision whether you've decided to take a clerk's position or to try to climb the corporate ladder. You're taking full responsibility for the income that's coming into that. You control that 100% of the time. You can choose not to get. You can go on public assistance and choose to go on public assistance and have that for your income. So I don't understand that his
I look at it.
I don't think it's that anything to discuss. Of course, you're responsible for your income, 100%. Now, what's the other thing?
Let's keep.
Okay,
Let's
I
keep
think it's
going.
that obvious to everybody. And then the other thing was you have to create value before you get paid. Right? To me, these are in the same vein, right? But I don't think, again, I think employees a lot of times, they're just like, I get paid to do a job, and they're not thinking about creating value. And by the way, that's true for business owners too. But that's a mind shift that I'm not sure everybody is comfortable making.
I think it's also bad leadership. Great leaders help the entire team know how to create value. So now we're going to get into a whole separate conversation about what good leadership is. Let's take that to a whole other episode. Like we should pin that one and have an episode on that problem.
But Randy does make a good point about people not understanding the concept of value.
Sure.
And to his point about people, one of the reasons people think that they're deserving of a job, just deserving of this paycheck, if I showed up at Starbucks and I should get paid, is they don't realize that they're creating value. That in the aggregate of these tens of thousands of baristas around the country, they're creating tremendous value or not, right? So yeah, part of that, it's a good discussion. Your point's well taken, John. It's a good discussion to have. And why is that? Number one, and two, what companies have solved that problem?
Well, there's different ways to create value, right? You use Starbucks. I mean, the barista is creating value by offering a service and making people coffee and everything else. But so is the entrepreneur that opens the Starbucks. They put up the capital, they build the building. I have no idea what it costs to open a Starbucks, but somewhere between hundreds of thousands and millions, I'm sure, right? And so that person that sets that up, and then John's talking about good management. Those are all important parts of entrepreneurship. So is, by the way, Howard Schultz, the guy that started it, to come up creating the concept and the infrastructure and the processes. That's a multi-layered. You got different layers of service there. Where the plumber we were talking about before, it might all be in one, but those are all valuable things, in my opinion.
Yeah, for our listeners, if you really want to study a successful entrepreneur journey, Howard Schultz is an amazing story that started very, very small, and to the earlier point that John made about interviewing people and talking to people and studying the industry. In fact, it should be a textbook on how to go about it.
Probably is. I think my recollection is 100 stores in the first 10 years, and in the next 10 years they got to 10,000 stores. So
his last thing, or real big point, is that the real barriers are psychological. Now, I don't know if I fully agree with that, but what are your takes on that? He talks about that it's really psychological.
Finally, I agree with something he said from personal experience. I had this long career, as a big muckety muck in some big ass companies. And over those years, at least 10 times people came to me and wanted to back me in my own business. And I didn't pull the trigger. I was making a ton of money. I had a family with kids going to school, going to college. I rationalized away fire. I said, you know what, that could burn me. I'm not gonna play with fire. And I just didn't do it. It was totally psychological. It had anything to do. I knew I had the skill to do it. People were going to put up their own money. I didn't even have to put up my own money to do it. But I guess what I would have given up were the stock options and the salary and the security, which was all fake, by the way, because you're working for a big company and they can be done with you tomorrow, I was working for a company, one of the largest retailers in the world. We bought out by a half-assed bankrupt company, and they fired all of us. I reported to the chairman, and the next day I didn't have a job. So, yeah,
It's just different kinds of risks, though, Anthony. I think that's the thing people need to understand is no matter what you do, big company or entrepreneurship, each one has a set of risks.
yep.
Just be aware of what those risks are, and then choose the ones you're most comfortable with, or the ones you want, or the one. But I just to say that one is more risky than the other is a point of view, right? And I'm not going to. And so, like my wife has a very different point of view than I do,
Yeah.
and we both think that the other one's job has more risk associated with it, and we're both right for ourselves, and we're wrong about each other. And so, like she's chosen the thing that's less risky for her, I've chosen the thing that's less risky for me, and we're both right.
Yeah, I would phrase it just with a different word. Don't do anything you're unsure of, that you're not committed to or unsure of.
I'm
If you
committed,
have,
yes. Unsure, I don't agree with. The people who do things are unsure of all the time.
maybe hesitant about. If you're going to be hesitant about it and afraid and constantly be thinking, gee, should I have done this or not? If you're going to do it, you got to go do it. And fight to the end and fight through all. Every entrepreneurial story. I don't care if it's Michael Dell on a local lemonade stand. You're gonna run into a brick wall at some point along the way, and it's gonna look like the end of the world. And you're just gonna have to either fight through it or give up.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think most entrepreneurs are scared when they start, right? The fact is, if they start the business, if they take the leap to walk away from the corporate job, there's at least some fear. Now they go over, real courage is overcoming that, right? Or if they are raising a bunch of money and going in debt, like all three of us have raised money before, right? When you start taking money and you go in debt, there's a little fear there, or for most people there are. And whether it's that, it's raising money. So I think the fear is okay. I think the fear is natural. I think most people have it. And part of it, though, is overcoming it. And maybe we're saying the same thing, but
Yeah, it's the commitment. Maybe fear. If I use the word fear, probably not a good selection, a good term, but you really need to be committed to the move. It's if you're going to throw the pass, commit.
what about people that start stuff as a side hustle? A lot of that.
It's a great way. It's a great way to try their risk on differently, right? It's a great way to try something on and see if it fits, which I think is there's a great article by Laura Nash out of the Harvard Business Review years ago that talks about success that lasts, and she writes about like how to try things on. It's a great article for anyone thinking about this. It's again Success That Lasts, Laura Nash, HBR. Great article about how to take on the side hustle.
Yeah, especially when you don't have family commitments. You're on your own. You don't have kids at home, things like that. You've got the time. Instead of finding some way to waste away a weekend, doing something on the side, I think is a great idea. I think it's great not just for the possibilities of earning an income, but it's great intellectually. You can learn something. You can test something. You can feel it out. Yeah, I think the technology really enabled it. You talk about something that's become easier to do. Technology, from whatever you want to go from the internet to AI and everything in between, mobile communications and all that have really enabled that type of thing. Where that certainly wasn't easy to do pre-1999.
All right. Well, I encourage everybody to read this article. We'll put it in the show notes. But all the numbers say business ownership and opening new businesses, it's growing for all age groups. I think we agree that it's never been easier, although, Anthony's point that it's been very, it's still difficult, right? Like it's not a walk in the park, and we've talked about some of that. But I just think the barrier to entry from knowledge, capital, some of those things is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So it's, people got to figure out for themselves, right? Is entrepreneurship right for me? Do I want to be a freelancer? Do I want to be Jeff Bezos? Or, where in between? So, gentlemen, I have enjoyed it. And I will talk to you after the break.
Here are tales of abundance. We know that fitness is just as important as money or milestones. It's one of our key 5 F's. For lots of us, taking care of my body while I build my life is one of the more time-consuming and difficult goals to chase. That's why we're partnering with AG1. It's a daily drinkable habit. Less than a minute, that's formulated with 75 plus vitamins and nutrients and designed to support energy, digestion, and immune defense. It even has a few grams of protein that we're all chasing these days. And if you want to try it with our affiliate link, you'll also receive a free AG1 flavor sampler, plus vitamin D3 plus K2 with your welcome kit when you first subscribe, a $72 value. Go to shop.drinkag1.com/tales.
Listeners, welcome back for the Abundance Briefing. John, you're excited about this AI Sommelier job, so let's talk through
Well,
it.
it used to be. Yeah, my wife and I used to keep all of our like wine, what we liked, inside of an app that dealt with like what wines we liked, what we'd been drinking, and we had this whole thing where we kind of kept track of what we enjoyed. And so now we use AI, and what we do is we take pictures of the wine bottles we drink. It goes through and we rate the wines about how we drink them, and it's able to give us recommendations about what we like, what we don't like. It's able to look up pricing, check the internet. It's pretty cool. And we've actually taken pictures of the wine we have at our house, so it knows like what wines we have in our house. It tells them when to drink them. It's amazing. And so it's like having a sommelier in your pocket that tells you what you enjoy. And the cool part is now with AI, you can take pictures of the wine list or take a picture of the menu at a restaurant. And it's just so cool because it actually feels like you have a sommelier in your pocket all the time. We love it.
You
Yeah, that
guys,
sounds cool.
you edited it, or Amber did, or what? Where did this?
Yeah, we just created a project, right? In the project, we just told, the AI to like give us the project knowledge, give us the project instructions, create the project. And then we just took pictures of all the wine that we have. We've taken pictures of the wine we've been drinking at different restaurants and that we like. And we tell it what we like and what we don't like about the different wines. And we can take pictures of menus, and super cool.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So you've got a database of the things you like. You can take a picture of a menu and say, here's what's available. Tell me between, with you it's like $11 and $40. Which
11
wine,
and 15, but whatever. Yeah.
which wines fit the bill. That takes such pressure off you. I think
Well, you can take a picture of the wine list and take a picture of the food, both, right? And let it put all of it together, and then you can ask the sommelier at the restaurant to give their, and compare the two. It's super fun.
I think that's really cool. I'm trying to think. So I am way less wine wise, I guess, right? And I can't, but I do the same thing. I've taken pictures for years when there's a wine I like. I'll take a picture, but then I can never find the wine, and I don't choose deep enough, so the pictures end up being a waste. So this could even be good for somebody like me that knows nothing about wine.
Yeah.
Well, earlier in our episode, this think about the entrepreneurship here that someone could apply.
Yeah.
Making it easier on, people that aren't as sophisticated as John, just to select a decent bottle of $40 wine. That's kind of a sweet spot for people. Well, now $40 to $80, but what's a good wine here that's that fits my taste? And we're having fish tonight. Fill me in. So I think it's great.
And I think creating an app, like this is where I think apps could be in trouble. Like this 5 years ago could have been an app, and it was an app that we used. We stopped using a paid app and started using AI because we had better success with it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's both bad for the business being disrupted and really good for the people doing the disrupting and opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And
That's right.
And I think the difference is you and I approach wine differently, right? Like you know something about it, I don't. That app is going to be completely different same thing, but different use cases. So.
And look, to be fair, you say I know something about wine. Let's be clear. I know very little about wine. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. I've had some really nice wines in my life, but usually that's because of who I'm with, not because of me.
All right, let's go to our next topic. I found this one really interesting. That AI is changing human language, and the example I heard this on a different podcast, but it was, and they talked about the delve effect. The word delve is being used 10 times as much in AI as in normal human language. But now because of that, humans are starting to use the word delve more than ever, but in particular, it's showing up like crazy in academic papers, professional writing, and all of that since ChatGPT launched. So have you guys seen examples of this, or I mean, have you noticed other?
No, tell me more
A-
about.
AI has a writing style, like you see that for sure. And there's AIs that are specifically designed to not sound like AI. And like there's the typical, like, the three-part argument. And like there's just some really typical kind of AI writing styles that you see. So I'm not surprised by this. My hope, going back to what we talked about before the break, my hope is that we actually get into a more nuanced language and that AI drives us to better communication. And Randy, you're the first person that ever said this to me. Like, if people could become better communicators if AI holds them accountable to actually being better at prompting and teaches people how to not talk past each other.
Yeah. Anthony, what you said? Tell you more. What do you want to know more about?
This was all news to me. I didn't quite understand I didn't get a chance to read the article. And so were there other examples besides delve that it talked about? How else was it changing language?
Just any words. Yeah, there's several words that it uses more than humans tend to use them, and maybe it's because it's pulling out of certain sources. But I look at this similar to if you take a bunch of kids, right? Like my youngest son, especially, they're coming up with new language, right? And sometimes whether it's kids, whether it's culture or whatever, they come up with a saying, and the three of us have never said it in our life, and then all of a sudden, a certain percentage of people start using a word more. So it's not any different than humans doing this or culture doing it, except you have to start asking some questions like, okay, now AI is impacting the words we use. Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is an age-old thing, though. I mean, in business, well, let's circle back to that, and let's double-click on this, and so things catch on and get overused, and I'm sure this will be a similar situation. This too shall pass, probably. I imagine. I thought this was about phrasing and things like that, but I guess.
I took this more to mean it's bringing more words back into use rather than creating. By the way, AI uses analogy all the time and metaphor, and it may try to create idiomatic language, which is the circle around double click thing. Like that's but I think this is not about idiom. This is really about using more language. It wasn't, Randy? That's what I took from it.
Yeah, just different. We can each have our own takeaway. My takeaway is more that it is impacting human behavior, and humans are using delve more than they ever have because they're not using as much as AI, but the AI is actually impacting human behavior and what words we use and how we do it.
Well, it
So,
obviously had an impact on you. It's a so what for me. So.
all right. Well, for that, we'll go on to the next topic. This will be another so what for Anthony. AI coding assistants now are using vision. I do this all the time. I literally probably do this 50 times a day now. Do you guys do this? Where what it's talking
Same.
about, by the way, is you take a screenshot, right, and you snip it, you put it in the AI, and say debug this for me. Or I use it on websites all the time if I can't navigate or I don't know where to click. I literally just take a screenshot and say, tell me where to click. Here's what I'm trying to do. You guys do this?
You doing that with your
All
own
the time.
websites or websites that you're visiting?
Anything I'm working on, Anthony, I am going really, really deep with this Hermes bot right now and my own AI agent. And I'm doing, not an exaggeration, I've done hundreds of things that I have no idea how to do. And I ask the AI and it says do this, but then even when it gives me directions, a lot of times I don't know how to do it. So I take a screenshot, it says go to this website. I go to the website and set up blank. I'm like, okay, I'm here, I don't know where to click. And then it walks me through. It's like, oh, on the left, click here. But I've done it with, I've had code that, by the way, I can't write code. I've had Claude write code for me, and then it doesn't work, and I put it in, and I say, I take a screenshot, and I say, why isn't this working? Here's the error message. Here's the error message I got. right? All of that type of stuff. I mean, John, I think you're nodding. It looks like you use it. How do you use it? Similar, same, different?
Same. Yeah, all the same stuff. It's like, hey, I need help doing this thing, and it takes me step by step through it. And I'll take pictures of the terminal, take pictures of the code, take a picture of the website, take a picture of an error message. I've even used this inside of the car when a light came on. I didn't understand the dashboard, took a picture of the dashboard and said, what's going on? And it was able to diagnose the problem.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, Julie wanted me to hang some stuff on the side of our house, and it's stucco. And the things that I had put nails or screws in the past didn't work very well. And I'm like, okay, this isn't very good for the stucco. So before I did it, I literally took a picture of the stucco, said, what is going to be my best source for hanging something? You know, here's what I'm hanging, blah, 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 and doing it that. But I'm using it more for just debugging and coding all the time, right?
Yep.
So you say you're coding. What are you coding? What's the output that you're getting from your coding?
Anthony, I've coded all kinds of stuff, and again, don't know how to code, but as I'm doing things, I have a workflow, and the Hermes bot in particular does this. Claude will do it. Sometimes it'll say, should I create a Python script to run this? I'm like, sure. It creates it. Well, I don't know how to debug it or check it.
Yeah, I'll give you a real example. I'm writing a book right now for Prasina, or medical practice, and I've got, almost 1,000 academic papers we've drawn on to make sure that we're scientifically accurate. And I wrote code to have it check and make sure that each article is appropriately attributed, that I've done it correctly and haven't missed something.
Is that code the actual? When I think of code, I think of the nerds in the back room creating codes that run machines and run agents and things like that. But that to me sounds like just a very sophisticated prompt, not necessarily.
No, this is actually in terminal, using code in terminal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't be further away from that.
I'm using it a lot. So the Hermes bot I'm running on my business partner's machine in Tulsa, right? 8 hours away or whatever it is. So he had a machine that was unused. We added a bunch of RAM to it to make it better. But I'm running it from Austin. And I'm sending that. So there's a bunch of things that I'm doing. John's saying in terminal. I didn't know what that was. But anyway, it's just opening, sort of like the old DOS days. I don't want to get too technical here. That's not the best analogy either. But sometimes it wants to do something up there, and it's easier for it to write a short piece of code. Sometimes it's 10 or 20 lines long. It's not complex to get that machine to do something better than, or that's how you have to tell it. So it could be, Anthony, as simple as writing HTML, for a website. Yeah. I've done that several times. I created this shipping tool that it created.
I got a little FOMO going on here in terms of, am I a fear of missing out on, what I could be using that I'm not using to help me with the consulting business. So I've got to get myself maybe up to speed.
It's just a never-ending battle, right? Like, you can get up to speed so fast, but it's just, man, it can do so much. And if you were up to speed 6 months ago and you haven't done anything, you might as well be 10 years behind at this point, right? It's moving fast. So, all right.
Are you guys using agents at all?
That's what my Hermes bot is, an agent. Yeah. It's really multiple agents working for me. All right. Our final topic should be a quick one. Waymo is making money in San Francisco. They're profitable. I don't know, it's interesting. It's where's it going? Here in Austin, we've got robo-taxis. I just read an article over the weekend that they have no limit. Basically, they're going to make robo-taxis as fast as they can make them. That they're so far from demand right now, and they're ready to go. So, Anthony, you're kind of, I don't know. You don't believe the story, or the look on your face. What were you saying?
Yeah, anytime someone tells me that they're profitable that makes, okay, what does that mean? Is that gross profit? Is that fully loaded profit? If I wanted to buy the San Francisco Waymo franchise, would I pay a premium? What's the is it free cash flow? Fully amortized and blah,
Sure.
blah, 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 blah.
They claim they're doing 150,000 plus paid rides per week right now, and that's turning a profit.
And that's great. I mean, and clearly this thing is going to be a runaway success in terms of the number of rides people are going to be taking in the years to come without a driver. The longer term issue is that they're already running into a scale problem where municipalities are doling out X number of licenses to the multiple companies, which means there may present a problem becoming a dominant player in a market. So Waymo gets 1,000 taxis, Elon gets 1,000, there's a couple more, and the names escape me right now, they get 1,000, and it limits the market share in a market. And as a result of that, they all have equal pieces of a pie. And that's no way to, run a business. So I think robo-taxis are here to stay, but are they going to commoditize it in a way that prevents these companies from really having the best robo-taxi, the lowest price robo-taxi? They're all going to cost the same amount per mile, and on and on. So I think there are some issues that have yet to be faced because, as always, our governments, whether they're large or small, federal or state, city or county, all want to get their hands in the pie and figure out, how they're going to leverage this, how they're going to make a buck off of this, and is it going to present problems to these companies? Because you're right. I saw a video today of Elon's factory here in Austin. The cars are driving themselves off the assembly line.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to watch the things are being built by robots. They drive themselves off the assembly line and they're out the door ready for business. I mean,
The question is whether he's going to let other people buy them and make money from it, or he's going to try and keep them himself. I mean, the cost is so low, hard to see him having other people. I mean, I'm interested in the business model, what he thinks it's going to be. So,
well, he's not far away, I'm told, anyway. I don't know if this is an actual true statement of monetizing the Teslas owned by Randy.
Yeah.
In other words,
Right.
when Randy's car is parked in the driveway, linking that thing up and having that be used as a robo-taxi. So I think it's great. This is exciting. This to me, this is just,
the
bomb.
Jetsons, man.
Well,
I love it.
This is keep in mind, it's going to displace, I don't know the time frame, but it's going to displace 3 million Uber, Lyft taxi drivers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 99% of them are going away at some point.
And then truck drivers is one of the biggest employers in the country.
Right.
So
Couriers, I mean, all this different stuff.
Yeah.
But it also creates opportunity. It creates safety. One of the interesting questions is, when this happens, we have all these parking garages and all these parking spots. But if you have robo-taxis or Waymos or Zoosks or whatever, and they're running around town dropping people off, they don't need to park very much. And parking space goes way down. That opens up land and real estate, whether it's residential, commercial, parks. We talked about vertical farms last week. I mean, power stations, whatever we need. So
Yeah, not hard to blow up a parking garage and build a affordable housing or some other kind of housing unit over there. So yeah, it's a disruptive, but as we've been talking about, it's going to create more opportunity.
yeah,
Somewhere, the network effects, if you will, or the dominoes that fall. I think it's terrific.
well, already in Austin, like the Tesla robo-taxis are way cheaper. They're cheaper than an Uber. They're cheaper than a Waymo. They're cheaper than everything else. Now, there's not enough of them, and people can't get on them. But this is what entrepreneurship is supposed to do, right? Is it's supposed to make things? Yes, this sucks if you're one of the 3 million people that drive Uber or Lyft or whatever for a living. But if you're the riders, which is far more than that, your price just went down, which creates more abundance, which allows you to, spend in other places and making everything cheaper and, in theory, more convenient. So, all right.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I talk to the Uber drivers that take me to the airport and whatever, they're not raking in the net profit when you factor in their insurance and the wear and tear on their vehicles and so forth. So, yeah, it's a job, but there may be something better for them out there.
Agree with that too. All right, again, everyone, download, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. And gentlemen, I will see you next week. In the meantime, let's all go out and spread a little abundance this week, huh? Listen and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Click follow for more content like this, or go to talesofabundance.com to join our community and get free tools.